Hello and welcome to Gierok Farms. It's a nice cold spring day.
A cold spring day again.
Hopefully by the time this video comes out it warmed up and we're out in the field. But today we're going to be putting the drag together, and then we're also going to show you our main drill, since there was so much good comments about our older drill that we showed you. So.
Yeah, we'll go through it in this drag. And this is a John Deere drag. I don't know how old it is, but I'm gonna guess the 60s. But it's pretty flexible. You got all these settings on here for the depth you can set. I mean, my dad's first drag was a 3-section, very flexible, and M could pull that. This is a 4-section. M could pull it, but you get in those side hills. So I like to use the tractor with the duals on after we're done doing the tillage part and everything's. Unhook that, put the duals on, so we're on a side hill and we're just basically coasting around with this tractor.
Yeah, and then for those of you that are unfamiliar with what a drag is, it's a finishing tool for some of your nicer crops, like your new seeding alfalfa, or like a waterway, or it's that final finishing tool is what it is.
And what we do, like I got some of these grass fields where we'll spread manure, like in the fall or in the spring, or where the cows grazed last fall, and they got those cow pies that kind of stand up in the field. And maybe it has to dry off another day or so, but we drive around with this, kind of break up some of that stuff. I mean, that's the thing of it. And we could pull it behind our tillage machines too, but with these crooked fields we got, it's just better this way. Our farm, all our land is connected. I don't have to go out on a road with anything. I can usually cut through a different field to get to all my fields. So this will do a way better job because it's more flexible. It seems to me the ones on wheels, they have to carry them too high. I don't know if it's just the way, they're not able to flex as much, but on a leveler farm, they work good. I mean, so when we're done, we put on a pallet pull bar in the front there. That's the only part that takes up some extra space. We got to find a place on the side. I mean, we used to hang it in the shed. We had these brackets hanging off the sidewalls where you could hang it, but it's kind of a 2-man job to get this thing up there. I found it nice on a pallet, then I can move it.
Yeah, I remember that job as a kid.
Yeah.
It was never the nicest to get them off there. It was a good spot to store them, but...
And then these spikes, they get sharp, so they're kind of stabbing you as you're pinching your fingers in places. You got to be really careful how you handle it. But yeah, it's a great spot to store it. I mean, it's just all iron. Some guys will leave them outside and then the weeds grow through, and if you're not careful around the buildings, you might drive it over with something through the summer or something. So I've heard of that. We're gonna get this put together here and have it ready to go. One of our hooks is gone, so we might have to weld something up there. And then we got a piece of log chain. That way we can set it the distance we want behind the tractor to your drummer and the tractor. So that's pretty simple there. But yeah, we got to do some fixing there. And I'm in here too. I had to find a way to fix that. That's not the original. Get a better seed bed if you use something like this. It's just we don't have that much, so I would rather do a better job with what we do have. And then they got these settings. I think we just leave it down, but we'll show you guys how you stand the drag. There's different versions of this type of stuff, but there's just a spring in there and that holds that in place. Like when we were kids, when Dad would seed with that old Van Brunt, we'd have it first pass after the disc, we would set it all the way to the top. And then, for instance, he'd tell us to set it like, let's for instance, on the 3rd hole. So it's a little less aggressive. And sometimes it don't make that much difference. I think when you got sand, it'll make more difference because it can really, this thing can really plow. But it's just to break up some of the bigger bunches like in the clay and stuff.
And the reason you'd want to use the drag on your crops like alfalfa is that, you know, you're creating a seed bed, but you're also creating that field and how level it is for the next, you know, 3-4 years, however long that field is in that crop. You know, so you kind of want to make it nice and finish it really nice and put in the extra effort and make a couple passes.
Some places where you had the plant up and down the hill, like on the ends, you come through with this and it gets all your lines running contour with the hill maybe, because you don't want the water to follow like where your opener put your seed in. You know, people have trouble with that when they plant corn up and down the hills. The water will get in that groove and go, but if everything gets kind of groomed the other way, it prevents some of that. And then of course, then you got to drive on that for several years to come making hay on that. So it just levels it up nice. It's really well, yeah, I like this drag. And then we can even, so if I had to go someplace to a field somewhere where I didn't want it to, or if I had to get through a gate somewhere, I can fold it like this. You maybe got to go a little slower.
Yeah, get down a narrow field road or
well,
whatever.
yeah, for like we gotta, like I said, we gotta go through the gates. I don't know if this ain't 24 feet. Well, them gates are only like 20, and then if you're not lined up perfect, you're hooking a post.
So we're gonna pull our drill around to the front of the shop, kind of look it over, and then we'll talk a little bit about this newer drill we got, the main drill on the farm.
The 1006 NT, which stands for no-till. So 10 foot. I think you can set this drill up so many different ways. You got these clamps for all your gangs, and they can be slid. I mean, this thing can even plant soybeans. First of all, now compared to that old drill of ours, I don't know, what do you think? This drill probably weighs maybe about 6 times heavier than that one. They got this big bracket up here for weights. I've never seen anybody put weights on it, but I suppose you get some really hard ground. You know, you keep it real good and stable. It's built good. For what we're doing here, this drill should last as long as I will ever need it. When I started looking at this drill, or getting something no-till, I never planted no-till before. I never even used any, you know, I never worked for anybody or anything that had, you know, where I was able to use something like this. But when I wanted to have 3 boxes, so I'm looking in the brochures, and they got what they call your main box is here, and your second main box, and then your alfalfa box. And then you look down here, so your grasses come through this little tiny tube here, so you're not going to put any real big seed in there. And then this is your second main and your first main. So the main seed box, I think it's 25 bushel. And then the second main, I don't know exactly what it is. It's a little bit smaller. So we're doing oats. So we got oats in the main, all my grass seed in the second main, and my alfalfa in the alfalfa or the third box. So if you come up here, there's 2 transmissions on here, which they got 4 different settings. You can plant 3 different seeds at the same time at 3 different rates. Or for instance, we're going to do waterway. Then I can shut my alfalfa almost completely off, or maybe I can have it on to just, I don't know, maybe 1 pound to the acre instead of, you know, 16, 18 pounds to the acre, you know, like you'd normally do. So and then you can crank up your grass higher, which when I seed hay, my alfalfa will be at its common rate, and my grass will be at a lesser rate, depending on what I'm wanting to have there. But anyway, so I'm able to, you know, shut one off completely, or because when we do cover crop, I'll mix oats with the rye. And that first year I did it, I used pretty much all oats. The guy just sold me a couple bags of rye, and I was impressed out of them 2 bags of rye, how they really, you know, mix with the oats. So the oats died, and by Christmas the oats was completely dead. and then that rye really greened up. So the neat thing is, so we mix it with the oats, so we shut off our other 2 boxes, our grass and our alfalfa completely. I don't have to take it all out. So it kind of gives you all sorts of options that way. And then I learned it the hard way when we're completely done. When we put this thing away, we make sure I shut my drill completely off, which is this lever. You'd shut that all the way off, and there's a big finger nut down here. Now that would close it completely. And if you look what goes on here, you see these little gears, and you watch that now. When I start increasing, what it does is it pushes that gear. I guess you'd call it an opener. That would make sense, of the seed box. So your seed box is here, and you got your opener, and then you see how that gear, the further that goes in, the more seed it grabs. I think for oats we're somewhere around there. It's almost wide open, not quite, but then you can set your transmissions, which on this is the opposite side. Again, there's 3 different speeds here, so you can really crank this thing up. This is just basically notches. So you get in your owner's manual, they got a bunch of charts in there, and they got kind of your average of what oats, because you almost have to calibrate where there's a way to calibrate this with a crank. You can do this right in your shop. And the thing is, you plant oats too heavy, and then it likes to lodge up. Some guys plant it pretty thin. It's more of a nurse crop for your hay. I like the straw. I mean, if you get a good year like last year, the heavier the better, because it really put out. It's a cheap crop to put in. So anyway, that's generally what happens. So you got that. So there it'll be completely off. So that gear is completely out of that. That's completely shut. And that was what I was talking about with a mouse. I think they crawl up through them grooves. They get in there. That was crazy. Now if we get down underneath here, this would be our no-till coulter. This is the aggressive run. We got this huge spring here, and that puts your down pressure on. So this guy, all he does is cuts a trench. He cuts a groove in the soil, and then everything behind that is kind of what we'd call our conventional. So like our old drill, or just a drill that isn't considered no-till, would have that same gang, everything that's behind this one. This is basically just cutting a hole in the soil for that furrow, for that opener to put the seed in the right spot. You get it from the side here. So here you got your no-till coulter, and then you got this part, which you got your 3 different seed openers that come down through. This would be what they call double disc. Now the old drill was considered to be single disc. So if you come on this side, between this little rubber flap and this little piece here, that's where your seed falls. So it places it just so. And that's where it can plug. If a piece of straw or some foreign object happens to get into your seed box, or maybe sometimes if a person, when he stops, soil is kind of wet and it jerks backwards, maybe just a little bit, and then the clay will push up in there like wet clay. That's where wet soils, it gets kind of tricky to plant in that. Anyway, something to watch for when you're planting. And then back here you got what you call your press wheel. There's notches up here in this little device, which it allows it to go higher or lower to give it so much press. So you kind of like pushing the opening back shut. So we got from this tube, so this would come out of our main seed box, and then you get back down here. Now this pipe is pushing backwards. I'm using it for grass seed right now. So I don't want my grass seed to go deep. You don't want it to go in the opener. You don't want to go through the coulter. You want it to come out on top of ground. Then this little packing wheel will push it in some. And then our drag, if we choose to, we could go over it with the drag again too, and that would help bring it in. And then this smaller tube, a little finer, that's your alfalfa or your timothy or your really small seeds. This piece, and I didn't realize this at first, you take these 2 little bolts out and you can turn this so this pipe it's probably facing right down into there. Yeah, so
it's at a 45 or
it's a little angle there. Yeah. I don't know if it's a 45. Well, I suppose about that. Yeah, so you can
swivel it.
Yeah, you can turn it and it can push the seed into there. So if we wanted to do oats and rye and put it in 2 separate bins, up there, instead of trying to mix it where you put 2 pails of one and 2 pails of the other, I can, but it just, I'd have to take all my grass seed back out because I usually have some grass left over from years before. But anyway, so this thing gives you oodles of options. And then there's different no-till coulters available. I mean, this thing can be set up so many different ways, but
I'm sure you can tension your springs differently and buy different springs for different down pressures.
And then you got this nut here. these two double nuts here, you just keep cranking them tighter, and that puts way more tension down. So if you're in some area of the country where the soils are really hard, or you got a lot of, I don't know.
Or like if we did like some CRP stuff.
Yeah, and you want to cut through all that trash, see? And you don't want to till it all. There's a lot more to this than that's even on this one, but this machine, the framing is designed for that. Then out here, what makes everything move, makes our gearboxes, everything move, is all ground driven. So the tractor, you don't want to be moving. I only go maybe 4 to 5 miles an hour. You're typically, the slower you go, the better job that gets done. You put too much speed into it, it starts skipping and hopping over stuff, and you don't get a very good consistent seed bed, or seed spacings and all that.
But the soil contact.
Yeah, and all that. You got to give the machine time to do what it's doing. Now here we're able to kick it out of gear. So if we were going to drive this down the road, like 10 miles to another farm, or even a couple miles, there's some gears and stuff in here that don't have to turn. Your whole drive chains will be spinning, So this is out of gear and in. So what happens here is we're seeding rye. I can shut off my other 2 boxes. So 2 of the boxes are hooked to the one side and 1 box is hooked to the other. Even though they're all turning, it's just you're not wearing stuff out that's not getting used. Or like I said, when you go down the road. And then the way this is set for depth, we got this knob here, and all that does is, now here's your hydraulic system that puts your drill up out of the ground and back down into the ground. That's hooked into your tractor. And this knob here is basically, this will slide this mechanism up or down. And then there's this pin right there. This pin right here will come in contact with this guy. This guy is clamped to the frame. That's able to be adjusted too. But when that comes in contact with that spring, or this pin, it will stop it. That's how you set your depth. So hydraulics set the depth. So here, 411 rounds, and you put that on there. And anyway, then there's some equation. That's how you calibrate it. So you would basically be hand driving it instead of, and then your seed would drop out into put all kinds of small containers underneath each opening, and you have to catch all your seed and then put it in one container and weigh it, and then they got this equation to figure out how to calibrate this thing. And
it's a lot like if you had like a fertilizer spreader,
yeah,
or
all
something
that
like
stuff.
That.
It's more.
You figure out the density of your seed and then how well it's flowing through your machine, and then you can really dial it in.
And the thing is just products we're putting on, seed fertilizer, any kind of product. I mean, it's so expensive. Like alfalfa, you can pour it on, but talking $400 a bag for this stuff. I mean, you don't want to, and that does what, about 2.5 acres, 3 acres at the most. I mean, you don't want to cheat yourself and don't put it on enough. But again, when the more acres you got, the more critical it is to have this dialed in.
Yeah, like any business, it's your profit margins are slim, and you gotta, pay attention to stuff like that. Otherwise, you're just gonna pour money down the drain.
Exactly. Yeah, it's quite a tool. At first you look and you wonder, well, why are these things out here? There's different sprockets that could come with this, depending on what you're doing, that you can switch out in different places to get different settings.
Yeah, because Great Plains, they pretty much all their drills across the board are dang near the same drill.
They're very similar.
A lot of them are.
So all their no-till drills, the gangs are all the same, as far as I know. They do offer different coulters and things, but yeah, this will fit on the biggest ones down to the. Interesting thing is, when I first bought my first no-till drill, it was a 7-foot. And I bought it that way because I wanted a smaller tractor like this to pull it. Well, then I realized even this thing had a hard time pulling it in the hills. So then we go to the 100 horse anyway. So a few years went by. I think I had that one only 2 or 3 years. And it was set up the same way, 3 boxes, and that was in huge demand. So the smaller drill was in bigger demand yet than the 10-foot. And the next step up was a 12-foot. Well, the bigger they get, the less of them they sell, of course, but then that was more your hobbyist, or if a place would like rent them out, guy has a smaller tractor. I think I got more than all my money back on that one to go towards this one. So that worked out okay. So I was able, and this is big enough for us. It covers the tracks of the machine.
So you bought this specific one when?
13, 14, I think maybe 13.
And then
first time.
And the only real problem you've had is that cylinder.
Yeah, that was a major one. That was just drove me crazy because I was still learning why in the heck's it doing that, and that was just a seal out, an O-ring, as simple as an O-ring. But It was supposed to rain all week, and we had this field all ready to go. We seeded with the old one. The old one saved the day. So we're gonna set it down, and then we'll crawl up on top. Now that's the other thing. It's so tall. It's up there a ways. And no, I can't even reach the ladder until I set it down. So now there's your alfalfa, and it's got some kind of coating on it, and it's just like a little BB. You know, there, you can see how there's millions of seeds right there. So, and there's certain grasses that would flow here through here nice too in this box. But yeah, that's expensive. You can put $800 for the seed right here in this little hole. Yeah, and then here's our grasses. Now you see there's probably 5 or 6 different kinds in here. I like put some orchard grass in, brome, timothy, this fescue, and there's a few other ones they recommend too, but I like to mix them up because it's every year's different which going to take a catch. I've had years where, you know, so you put the oats and new seeding in this year, next year the crop's almost all alfalfa. You thought, well, now the grass took hold. But then maybe by the 2nd or 3rd year the grass starts coming. There's some in there, but it just doesn't. And then you'll get a year where I don't know if it's the moisture it gets at the time or what it is, but all of a sudden then the grass becomes more dominant. So the last thing you want is your grass to be competing too much with your alfalfa, but it makes way better baled hay. The best baled hay you can get is to have some grasses mixed with your alfalfas. And then what happens, the grasses lose their moisture so much faster than the alfalfa, and then when you rake it up, it rolls it together almost like a basket where your grasses almost hold all the alfalfa leaves from falling out. I mean, anybody that's baled a lot of hay will agree with that. So then you got your auger in here. Now this thing will turn very slowly, but it just kind of keeps your seed from bridging up. And this seed, you can see it's pretty fluffy, but it's just so it flows nice. We're gonna see if we can show you guys one of the openers here. So I got these, they sent this package of plastic brackets with, and in the main seed box I can plug every other hole. So what are we set at? So what is that? We're set at 7.5, so we can have 15-inch rows.
Yeah, for soybeans or something.
Yeah, like you can plug every other one, and it's just a big plastic something that covers every other one, so that it only drops it down, you know. And then we got our main seed box, which is set up the same way. It looks like our auger's a little closer to the bottom of the hole. And you can see our rye mixed in there. See, so our rye is these little short little ones, and then these longer ones are your oats. So you get a little bit of straw in there like that. And this isn't too bad of a piece, but once in a while you get a longer piece. You get too many of those, they build up in there where the openers are, and they start to plug things. You don't want too much of that in there. But anyway, this looks pretty, it was pretty clean oats. That's good oats really got that year. Some years there's a lot of straw in it. A nice day to talk about seeding because it's too darn cold. The ground was froze this morning where I could go with a load of manure just about anywhere. You know, it's crazy. We're what, middle of April, and it's still, and there's in the forecast it's still kind of the same story. It's not terrible, but it's not really, you know.
Yeah, it's been on and off. We've had some days they're 60 some degrees, really nice, sun's out, and then the next day will be high of 30. So
yeah, it takes it right back down, and
yeah, it's
and
been all over the place. We really haven't had a super warm night for a while now. So
well, we had a good rain where it really, I think we almost got 1 inch, which was very good, and a thunderstorm. You know, it thunders, and that's what brings your frost out. That thunder and that thunderstorm was usually warm rain too, and that'll bring frost out. And that was one day, and by the day and a half later, it's already below freezing at night and freezing again. So what happens is, what we don't want to see is everything wake up, like your alfalfas, and pretty much it goes right across the board with everything.
yeah, especially like fruits, like apple trees, and
they get going, and then it gets a real cold. You know, you get that cold and freezes everything off, and it just stuns it. It almost makes it harder for it to get started again. It takes a lot of warm weather to get it started again.
that's how our spring's been going so far. That's the drag and the drill. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Let us know down in the comments your experience with the drills and what kind of drill you have, and then let us know what kind of seeding rates you guys use, and especially any of you that have planted hay. I'd be interested to hear you guys and what you like for your mixes when it comes to grass versus alfalfa, or just straight alfalfa.
I'd like to hear what kind of grasses you guys would recommend. Some guys will say, I do not want no orchard grass, because orchard grass could get so, it's almost like hazelbrush if it gets older, like your first crop, it gets so tall. But then again, the best second or third crop is of orchard grass for grasses is orchard grass. That makes the best baby calf hay, and mixed with the dairy hay, that's the best hay. So the first crop, yeah, you got to get ahead of it. But then, you know, there's so many different kinds. So yeah, what's the best mix? I don't know.
For you normal viewers that are wondering where the heck my beard went, I get rid of it every year for my birthday. That's just kind of, I like to start fresh. So, and you might see some videos where I still got it. We filmed a bunch this winter, so that's why. But
trying to keep ahead of this whole thing, because we try to do videos when we can do them. You know, when the sun is out, or if it's just happened to be something we're doing. You know, we're going to do this today, so let's get out here and get some videos put together while we got a chance, so we can show you guys stuff.
But yeah, that's where the facial hair went. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Leave your comments down below, and we'll see you in the next video.